Okay, welcome back to another Between the Pages book chats. And today we have fantasy author Jeff Pryor with us, and he's here to talk about his series, The Ballads of Bards and Bastards. Say that 3 times fast. So thank you for being here, and I'll let you introduce yourself. So take it away.
Hi, I'm Jeff Pryor. I'm a writer from Michigan. I write mostly fantasy, a little bit of poetry too. This is my second series. The first one's kind of in limbo right now. We'll get into that a little later, maybe. This series is really focused on bards and music in general, which is another interest of mine. I always wanted to be a musician, play a lot of instruments, and this series is kind of my way of living two interests at once.
Okay, so give us an overview of the first book in the series and what's it about.
The first book really focuses on one character. His name is Edson Pye. He is coming off, he's a year before the story starts, he finished an apprenticeship to another bard who's one of the more famous bards in the lands. There's an annual competition among bards in a city called Lance. And at the start of the story, it's a year after his apprenticeship, but it's also the start of the annual competition, which takes about 10 days. He's coming into it as an unknown musician trying to make his name. Basically, is he wants to use this competition to vault into the superstardom that his mentor was. It's also his first chance to see his mentor after a year. Typically, the apprenticeship would last 5 years, but after 3 years, his mentor just dropped him as an apprentice and took off on his own way. He has no idea where he went, why he was dropped so early. He was forced to spend a year fending for himself, living, singing for his supper, basically, traveling around and doing what a bard does. Now he's trying to take what he's learned and make the most of it in this competition.
Sounds interesting. So, what were your inspirations for the book in this series? I know you mentioned you like bards, but how did that interest come about? And was there any other inspirations?
Well, originally the character kind of just appeared in my head. He just kept screaming, "Write my story, write my story!" And I had about a million projects going, and I wanted nothing more than just shut him up. But he was persistent, and so I tried writing the story, and it was really just a mess, and there wasn't much of a story there. And I kind of ended it where he was in a jail cell, which actually shut him up, and left it there and didn't really plan on pursuing it again. But then at a later date, I was going through all my projects I have going, and I came across the notes on that. I started reading it, and more of a firm story appeared in my head. And I really wanted to capture life, kind of like taking the musicians of today, the rock stars and that, and putting them into medieval settings. What if musicians were treated like they are today, with the groupies and everything else, managers, everything, and put that in a fantasy setting. Now, the other inspiration, there's a book called Kings of the Wild by Nicholas Eames, and the premise of that is it's more that your mercenaries and your fighters are kind of like the rock stars of that era. But just the whole idea of medieval rock stars just kind of stuck in my head. Kind of wanted to do the story, rock legends in a medieval setting.
Yeah, I was wondering when you were mentioning the rock star stuff that you had been influenced by Nicholas Eames. So,
Yeah, more than
um, so okay, have you frozen? Oh dear, I think we've had the feeds frozen. Oh, okay, I think we've lost Jeff. Yes, we have lost our guest. Okay. Well, we've lost the guest for today, Oh, and there he's gone. All right. So that's interesting. Hopefully, Jeff can get his internet. Oh, here we go. He's coming back in. Here we go. And we're waiting for the connection. La, 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 la. There. Okay. You back?
okay. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah. Your video is not. Audio's not coming in. We've got a serious lag. All right. Yes, you gotta love technology, don't you? Okay, we're the video's still frozen and we're not getting any audio. Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
I did move closer to my right.
Oh, yeah, we've lost you again. Okay, I think you're coming in now.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, you're kind of going in and out, but try it.
All right, we can try.
Okay, it seems to be coming in again. Okay, yeah. All right. So, well, we'll start it up again. So, see how we go. Okay. So, do you have any overall themes to the book?
Um, Really just music in general. I wanted the whole series to be about music. I use a lot of music symbolism in the story and the way I laid out the book itself. Really, I mean, the tagline is "Life is a song, sing it well." I just really wanted to get that. The bards are kind of more of a secondary thing in a lot of stories. I wanted to put them forefront and just kind of what's it like to be a musician in a medieval setting.
Yeah.
There's a murder that takes place that Edson gets sucked into a world of kind of intrigue in that. He gets kind of blamed for some things he didn't do, and there's a family that's fighting for power of a corporation. He gets kind of twisted into that and used a little bit, and has a couple love interests that really take him down paths that is. He basically has three interests in life: music, playing his music, drinking wine, and women. And all three interests constantly put him in trouble. Sometimes all three at once.
Well, that makes for good conflict in the book. Okay. So, tell us a little bit about the main character. What's he like?
Edson is a young man. He's really full of himself, especially on the surface. There are some doubts that you see more when you get into his head. But he thinks he's the best bard in the world, and he's out to prove it. Um, he's really cocky. He's extremely arrogant with women, with everybody. He's really not very likable, especially in the early going. He's so full of himself that you have a hard time, and readers have told me they have a hard time really identifying with him because he is so full of himself. But he goes through quite a journey and gets kind of brought down the peg a few times and comes out of it a little different person than he is.
Okay. So, tell us a little bit about the world. What's it like?
The world is actually originally from a D&D setting. I played Dungeons and Dragons for years. It's Dungeon Master. I used one of those worlds for this. It's kind of more of a low magic world. There is magic in the world, but it's not real prominent. Other than one city that was built by wizards, and most people that want to study magic go there. So most of the magic in the world exists in one place. So there is magic elsewhere. It's kind of a pretty cutthroat world. There's a lot of thieves, a lot of murder, things like that. There's not your typical fantasy race, so there are dwarfs. There's no elves. It's mostly just humans. There's dwarfs mostly in one part of the world, though they are occasionally seen elsewhere. There's not. There are some of your typical monsters. There are ogres. There are some of them. There's not orcs though. Um, it's I don't know. It's a loose magic system. Um, I don't really get too detailed in the rules of it. Most magic in this first story is kind of fortune teller magic. There's a tarot card reader he encounters that does some magic that kind of affects Edson's path. Um, and there's actually originally there's another story I really want to write, and this story somewhat leads into it. That's why I chose to use this world, because I wanted to give myself the option if I want to write that story afterwards. And it's kind of there's a lot of history in this world, more from the D&D side of things that comes into the stories.
Okay, yeah. Well, that sounds like an interesting world. So, what was the hardest type of scene or the hardest scene for you to write in the book?
The hardest scene, really, most of the story really is from Edson's point of view. There is another character who's really his rival through a lot of the story, but I wanted to get his point of view, and it comes late in the story. He gets one chapter that's kind of his point of view. Switching gears was really difficult to begin with, but then this character, he's dealing with an addiction, and I really don't like the character, but his story is really deep and interesting. So I had a really hard time writing from his point of view. Um, there's a couple scenes where he hits some pretty low points, especially in the second book, that took a lot to write those scenes because I had some friends that went down the addiction path, and some of that came out in the story.
Yeah, it's always hard to write those type of scenes. So, what was your favorite scene or type of scene to write in the book?
Probably when Edson or any of the other bards are performing, there's parts of probably I think 26 or 27 songs in the first book. You don't ever see like the whole song presented. They're more in chunks. Like the first chapter, Edson's on stage. It starts out with a verse of the song. Then you go into his thought process, what he's thinking, what he's seeing from the stage, and then it gets back into the song again, another verse of it, and then more of that. But just when they're performing, it's a lot of fun. And I write a lot of poetry on the side anyway, so that part of it was interesting to mix the two together.
Yeah, I have a few songs in my nautical fantasy, and I also write poetry. So yeah, it's fun when you can add it to the books. So, do you have any quirky secondary characters or scene stealers?
There is a love interest of Edson's that I think really, especially more in the second book, takes some prominence and kind of takes the story over at times. There's another bard he meets late in the first book. He's a pretty interesting character, and he's becomes more prominent in the second book as well. Um, you meet up. There's quite a few interesting characters throughout the story, though. But Edson's really the focus, and he's such a diverse, interesting character himself that it's hard to take away from what he's doing, especially when
Okay.
he's drinking. When he's drinking, it can happen.
Yeah. So, what character would you like to hang out with in real life?
Probably Edson, actually. It'd be a lot of fun. Um, the other character I mentioned, his name is Cadran. I don't know if I'd want to hang out with him because I've seen that path so many times with my own friends and that, and I don't really want to go down that road with somebody again. I've helped people with addiction and fought that battle, and it's not something I'd want to deal with again. So I wouldn't say him. But yeah, probably Edson.
Yes. Well, yeah, a night out on the town with him, eh?
Yeah, yeah. I'm a little older now, so I don't know how I'd recover from that, but it'd probably be fun.
Okay, so you write fantasy, of course, but are there any other genres that you have thought you might like to try?
Well, obviously the poetry. I do have a book, a collection of poetry out now, and I plan on putting more out at some point. I do. I'm working on a western. I'm not working on it currently. I wrote about the first 5 chapters, and I came to a plot hole that I got to fix before I can really work on it. My father was always into like Lewis L'Amour westerns when I was a kid, and I read a lot of those, and I always wanted to write one. We lost him last year, and that really made me want to write that story. And I've got the story in mind. I just got to find time, get back into it. So I will write a western eventually. I actually wrote a Robin Hood story that I haven't finished editing and put out yet. Um, Beyond that, I can see myself writing just about anything if the interest strikes me. I have a more of a modern story that I'm working on that has a little bit of elements of fantasy, but not. I wouldn't really call it urban fantasy. It just has some elements. But I can see I've got a Christmas story I'm working on. Really, whatever strikes my interest.
Hmm, cool. So I think we'll wrap it up here for today, and I'll let you tell everybody where they can find you and your books.
All right. Well, my books are on Amazon. Some are on Barnes and Noble. Um, but my on the web, it's pretty much Pryor Words. My web page is pryorwords.com. Facebook is Facebook.com/Pryor Words. Twitter is Pryor Words. Goodreads is Pryor Words. Kind of just took that and ran with it. So it's Pryor and that works.
Okay, so thank you for being here. It was a pleasure chatting with you. Sorry we had some
Thank you.
technical difficulties. And
No problem.
between the pages book chat, we'll be back tomorrow with another author, so join us then. So bye for now.